Battletech has always been somewhat of an impenetrably dense franchise to get into, no matter which approach you're taking. If you want to get into the physical, tabletop side of things with the figures, you're looking at decades of history and rulebooks to learn. And on the digital end of the spectrum, you've usually gotten games that tend to lean more towards the simulation aspect than anything else, really making you feel like you're a battle mech pilot inside of a mech blowing things up. And so the Mechassault games on the original Xbox are a bit of an oddity, where everything else tends to be a pretty involved simulation of what it really feels like to be in a battle mech, or a in-depth tactical game, as we saw more recently. Mechassault is just a really cool action game set in the Battletech universe. And some of the really cool stuff in the Battletech universe is also represented, although a lot of it zips quickly by you without much in the way of an explanation. But the actual action here, which is made up of pretty easy to understand third-person shooting mechanics with a wide variety of different weapons, is fun enough to stand on its own without needing the player to really completely understand what's going on. And the story that actually directly affects the player is some pretty basic, simple stuff. You've been stranded on a planet with just yourself and a few other crew members, and you need to fight off an entire army worth of enemies. And the game does manage to keep things moving at a good pace, as well as constantly introducing new mechs and new weapons for you to mess around with. The gameplay never really gets stale, and I was having just as much fun blowing up enemy battle mechs at the end of the game as I was at the start. Despite its disinterest in explaining certain background elements of the Battletech universe, I still think that Mechassault is a fantastic jumping-on point for Battletech when it comes to video games, at least as far as mechanical complexity is concerned. With Mechassault, you'll get a really good idea of whether or not you're into the world of Battletech, its overall tone. And from there, you can choose to make a much larger time investment in another game that delves deeper into what's really going on behind the scenes of all the action you're seeing up front. But while I do commend Mechassault for being such a fantastic entry point into what is usually something that is very hard to get into, in the back of my head I'm always wanting it to be better, to be more like everything else Battletech, especially in terms of tone. Specifically, I want there to be more or less a built-in mechanic for desperation. Sure, the game is built around you being the last remaining member of your squad alone on a planet, but other Battletech games always find a way to bake in a way for the game to feel the desperation, on the edge, overwhelmed. Something I find the core of Battletech is really centered around. You always want to feel like you're on your last legs, like you're barely going to make it out, and you never get that feeling in Mechassault. However, if, unlike myself, you don't have such a weird obsession with some of the more granular aspects of Battletech, Mechassault is a very fun game that serves as an excellent on-ramp for Battletech as a whole. If you like the world you see here, I would highly recommend taking the next step and checking out one of the many MechWarrior games, or even the more recent tactical game published by Paradox. That said, I think that Mechassault's mechanics will manage to carry the game through to its conclusion whether or not you like the wider world. Giant robots satisfyingly destroying other giant robots is one of those things that will always remain universal. In my retro reviews, I look at games that are at least 10 years old, and I see if they've held up now, if they're still worth playing. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe so you can see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and thanks for watching.